Okay, we are now recording, and I will introduce our first speaker of the evening. We have Lauren Minyard, and Lauren is actually the Ag and 4-H educator and County Extension Director for the Love County OSU Extension Office in Marietta.
Yes.
And today, Lauren's going to talk to you guys a little bit about general chicken care and production.
Hey, thank you, Taylor. All right, just make sure everyone's seeing my screen, right?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so like Taylor said, I'll have my contact information at the end of the PowerPoints, but I'm in Love County Extension Office here in Marietta if you do have any questions. My slide going forward. There we go. So just a general outline. I want to start by talking about a few different breeds. I'll go through egg layers and meat layer or meat birds, and then just kind of dual purpose breeds. I've kind of just put a range that have different characteristics, different personalities. I just kind of picked a few. Obviously, there are a lot more breeds than I have listed, so just keep that in mind. Next, I'll go over any requirements that you need to have them, setting up your flock, purchasing your birds, a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about predators, and I'll touch just a little bit about diseases. So I always tell people, like, the first thing you need to know is where are you located and what are your zoning rules. So if you're in the city, the first thing before you even need to get started is make sure you can have chickens. If you are in town, I know here in Marietta, Oklahoma, we cannot have chickens. There's similar things in Ardmore. Usually if you're outside the city limits, you can have whatever you want. And some cities do allow them. So if you are in a smaller town, you usually have to kind of call your city hall. If it's a bigger town, usually all the zoning rules are posted online that you can find. The next thing to kind of keep in mind is where are you going to keep them? How much land do you have? How much room do you have? That can kind of determine how many birds you can have. And then, what do you want them for? Are you doing them to have eggs every day? Are you going to process your own chickens? Are you just having them for pets? Just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through everything. So the first thing I wanted to talk about are, everyone's kind of wanting chickens right now for egg production. So this is just going to be a few breeds that are just, known for to be good egg layers. So the first one is your Americana. A lot of people are looking for those blue, green eggs, the different colored ones. So your Americana is going to lay a blue egg. It's got the characteristic muff and beard. This is a docile and a sweet breed. It typically lays about 3 eggs per week. It is a hardy chicken. That means it'll do well, in the cold in the winter time. This is actually a breed that has been crossbred from the Araucana, which I'll get to in a minute. Next one is your Ancona. This bird lays a white egg. It's originally from Italy. It was bred from a long leghorn, excuse me. Its characteristics, it's got the black feathering with the white tipped feathers. It does lay a smaller egg. So this is your Araucana. The eggs can range anywhere from a blue to a green egg. And keep in mind, like, it's not going to change colors. It's, it'll start, if it's a blue egg, when it first starts, it's always going to be a blue egg or a green egg. So the Araucana came from South America, particularly Chile. It's got the ear tufts. It lays a medium egg. And a lot of birds have been crossbred from this for, certain characteristics. Next one is going to be your Leghorn. This is going to be a white egg layer. It is originally from Italy. It is a good forager. So keep that in mind if you're looking for one to help free range. It's one of the best white egg layers there is. So this is going to be one that's used a lot in your commercial egg production. The next one I have on here is a Campine. Not a really popular breed, but just kind of wanted to show some of the characteristics. Kind of more, chicken if you're looking for one that's just kind of keep for fun, I would say. It's originally from Belgium. It's got this solid color head, and then it kind of transitions to the colored neck and body, and it's got that barred style. So that's what you're seeing on that. The next one is going to be your Sussex, originally from England. This is a pretty good layer, about 260 eggs a year, kind of a light brown color. This is a broody breed. So if you're wanting to hatch your own eggs, keep in mind a Sussex would be a good breed to think about. This is a Moran, particularly a chocolate Moran. This breed is originally from France. It's known for really dark brown eggs. So when you see those dark brown eggs, typically it's from a Moran. It is also a really hardy chicken. You can kind of tell it's a bigger chicken, so it also does really well in cold temperatures. The last one of the egg layers I kind of wanted to mention was the Polish. It is a smaller chicken. It does lay a smaller egg, and it's white. It's thought that this chicken came from Spain, but I can't find where it was, for sure traced back. It's more of an ornamental, obviously it has the crest on its head, but it does lay a lot of eggs, about 200. So, but again, they are smaller eggs. So next I wanted to talk about dual purpose. So when I say dual purpose breeds, this is going to be a good egg layer, and it also would be good for meat. So the first one I wanted to mention is the Australorp. This is originally from Australia. It lays a light brown egg. It was originally bred from a black Orpington, and its kind of characteristics, you'll notice it's kind of got like a green sheen on its feathers. So it's really pretty when it's out in the sun. A lot of people like it for that. The next one is the Plymouth Rock. This one is originally from the Americas. The original one is this barred pattern you see on this one. It was bred originally from a Dominique and a Java. This is also a really hardy chicken. It's docile. It can be broody, but it's a really reliable egg layer. A Brahma. This one, the ancestry actually goes all the way back to somewhere in China. It is very gentle. So if you have, small kids, I like to say this is a good breed to have around. It has brown eggs. It is a larger breed. It does take a little bit longer to get to maturity. And it does have those characteristics, feathers on its feet. So this one is a Dominique. The eggs come anywhere from a light to a dark brown, originally from New England, and it does have that characteristic barred pattern. So this one is a Dorking. This is actually one of the oldest domesticated chickens. It was traced to been brought to Great Britain from when Julius Caesar, and the Romans came up there. So what's kind of interesting about the Dorking, it actually has 5 toes. So most chickens have the characteristic 4, the 3 in the front, the 1 in the back. It does have a longer body and has shorter legs. I'm probably going to butcher how this is said. Faverolles, it's from France. So it's a French word. It was crossed from several different breeds. This one actually has 5 toes as well. It's got the characteristic beard and muffs. It has a lot of feathers, kind of known as a fluffy chicken. It also has the feathers on its feet and on its legs. This is going to be your Jersey Giant. This one was first bred in New Jersey. It was bred to be a heavier bird, obviously for more meat purposes. It does have a really large frame, but it takes about 6 months before it really puts on the meat on its body. And this one does lay a brown egg as well. The Orpington, originally from Great Britain, also another really cold tolerant breed. If you have colder winters and stuff like that, just kind of keep that in mind. Also really docile, really friendly. Again, another bird to keep in mind if you do have small children. This is another good breed. One of the favorite colors of an Orpington is the lavender Orpington. Kind of almost a purplish looking gray That's why they call it lavender. I'm sure everyone recognizes this one. This is your Rhode Island. This originally came from the New England area. It will be your best dual purpose egg layer, approximately around 260 plus eggs a year. It's going to have your brown egg that everyone likes. Your males, can be a little bit more aggressive. A lot of times you'll see a lot of people getting rid of their Rhode Island red roosters just because it is more of typically, I'd say an aggressive breed. Some other things you might see are cinnamon queens. Cinnamon queens look similar to Rhode Island, and that's because they've been crossbred with other breeds from Rhode Island, and also, good layers because of that. This one is your Wyandotte. I wanted to kind of show this one because it does have that different pattern on its feathers. That's called this particular one is a silver laced. That is the original variety of this. It is an American chicken. It's also a good hardy chicken and has a very good disposition. A little less eggs, about around 200 a year. So the last I wanted to talk about are your bantams and your silkies. If you're looking to get an egg production and sell your eggs, probably wouldn't really go with your bantams because it is obviously it's just a smaller breed of some of those other chickens that we talked about, but it does lay a very small egg. So just keep that in mind. Bantams and silkies are kind of more bought just for ornamental purposes, just to have something fun to have around. Because they're smaller size, they have smaller eggs. The silkies are originally from somewhere in Asia. If you'll notice, it doesn't really look like feathers, it's more of a fur. And then silkies also have a black skin instead of the typical yellow skin under all the other chickens' feathers. And then silkies also are known to be really broody and lay pretty much just a few eggs. So also not really a good egg layer. So last I wanted to talk about on the breeds are going to be your ones specific for meat. So this is mainly going to be what you're going to hear is Cornish cross. So your Cornish chicken was originally from England. It had a large proportion of white meat, and that is why it was picked to be a meat bird and crossed with a white rock is what we have now that you see, all the chicken companies, this is what they use is a Cornish cross. It grows really fast, reaches maturity up at 6 to 8 weeks, can be 6 to 7 weeks. It's been bred to have the bigger breasts, the bigger thighs. Your finished product is about 75% of your actual live weight once you process it. The bad thing about this particular breed of chicken is about after 10 weeks, you're going to start noticing that you're going to have some bone problems. You'll start noticing broken legs, possibly. You might have chickens that are dying because they're having heart failure. And it's really just because these chickens get so big so quick that they just haven't been able to, they can't support the weight of their body. The males, about 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to have a 3 to 4 pound chicken, which is usually when everyone wants to process it. Females take about a week longer than that. So like typically 8 to 9 weeks. So next I wanted to go into your requirements, what you need, how to set up. So again, just kind of keep in mind what you want to do, how much room you have, if you want to do a chicken run versus having a free range chicken. If you have the room, you can free range, there's, different things that go along with that. If you want to keep them more contained, then, provide a chicken run, and we'll go over some different houses for that. No matter what, you want to keep them safe from predators. You always want to provide shade, have ventilation in their coop, make sure there's some kind of openings that some airflow is getting through in there. But you also want to keep it, closed enough that, when it's the colder months that it is staying warm in there. You want to make sure you have nest boxes available for your egg laying chickens. You want to provide roosts and then provide flooring. So I just kind of have a few examples of some different housing. The one before there was a typical coop that you could buy somewhere like Atwood's, Tractor Supply, Orchlands. These are just some examples of some other different styles. The one on the left, is just kind of put together with some 2x4s and sheet metal. And it's also one that you can move around and have on fresh grass. If you can kind of see in the background, there's some dirt piles, that's where it had been moved from. The other one on the right is going to be, just a typical chicken barn. And then it's got a chicken run outside. You'll see that, there's shavings on the ground and stuff like that. Something else to keep in mind is your fencing around it. Even if you do have free range birds, make sure you do have fencing on your property to keep out as many predators as you can. If you look at the picture on the left, obviously that's not going to keep out a whole lot of predators. When you do have chickens, a lot of things are going to be attracted to your yard. So just keep that in mind. If you look on the right, that's going to be chicken wire, chicken mesh. When you are putting that around your chicken coop, it's better to bury that about 1 foot deep, because a lot of your animals, your skunks and stuff, raccoons, anything like that, might try to dig in. So if you can bury that about 1 foot under the ground, that will help a little bit to keep some of them out. And obviously, the smaller the size and the fencing, the more you can keep out. And I don't think I put a slide on here, but just keep in mind, you'll also have predators from above. So if you are going to have a coop, make sure you have some kind of netting on the top of it as well. So next is nest boxes. If you are going to do egg layers, make sure you provide some kind of box for them to lay their eggs in. These are just a couple of examples I found. Again, you can buy pre-made nest boxes, or you can do them yourself. The one picture on the right, that looks like, some wine crates. A lot of people sell those nowadays, fairly cheap. You can kind of make your own. Make sure you add something like, some straw in there, make it comfortable for them to sit in. Roosts, make sure you do provide roosts for all of your chickens. Chickens don't want to be on the ground at night. You don't have a roost, you will see them doing everything possible to try to get up high. You don't want to put this too low to the ground, and you don't want to make it too high either, because when they try to jump down, you don't want them to get hurt and break a leg or anything like that. So, 1 to 2 feet off the ground, and then about 1 foot, going up like a ladder, and they can, go up there as well. Make sure you're providing about 1 foot of space and widthwise for each of the chickens, so that way they're not too crowded. And mentioning that, I forgot to say, keep in mind when you are doing your housing, you want to provide anywhere from 2 to 4 square feet per chicken inside the coop. So make sure your coop is big enough. If you are going to have a bunch of chickens, just keep that in mind, 2 to 4 square feet. If you are going to have a chicken run, you want to have about 10 square feet is pretty much good enough for that. And then obviously, free range, they can have as much as they want, but you still are going to lock those up at night as well. So again, make sure you're having that 2 to 4 square feet inside the house. So you want to try to keep something on the floor. This can be anything from straw to shavings to wood chips, as long as they're not treated. You can use corn stalks, just kind of anything like that, just to kind of keep it dry, and that'll keep a lot of other problems away. If you can keep that, and try to replace that at least about once a month. If it starts looking really dirty, looking really staying wet, just, good sign to go ahead and replace that. I did want to show something called a chicken tractor. So, going back to that other one that I showed that was kind of movable, this was designed and built to be moved pretty much every day. The purpose of this is so that the chickens are always on fresh grass, is more hygienic if you do have the room. So, if you're in a backyard, you obviously probably won't be able to do this, but if you have a couple acres, keep this in mind as an option. That way your chickens always are on fresh. It does have the lid, so it can close. You can open it during the day, and it's pretty safe from predators. So looking at your equipment, these are all different types of waterers. So the one on the far left, this is going to be for more of a chick waterer when they're small. And and then progressively getting bigger. If you're just going to have a few chickens, the ones in the middle, would work really well. If you are going to have quite a few chickens, the one on the far right, the bigger one, and have several of those, you want to make sure you're changing their water at least once a week. Try to keep it as clean as you possibly can. If you can raise this off the ground, that will help keep it cleaner. Put some kind of stone or some bricks underneath it and just keep it lifted. If you notice it's getting dirty, make sure you're keeping it as clean as you can. Again, that helps prevent some of those sickness, illnesses, within the chickens. So these are a couple different type of feeders. The ones on the far left are going to be more for your chicks, just a little bit smaller. The one in the middle, if you have just a few chicks, the one on the right, that's kind of a good one if you got a whole lot of chicks right now. And really the prices on those are pretty similar right now. I've kind of priced them anywhere from about $7 or $8. And then the one on the far right, when your chickens get bigger, that's something you can hang, you can leave on the ground. Again, it is better to kind of keep stuff up off the ground. That way things do stay cleaner. Also keeps away some of the rats and the mice, which can carry diseases. So just keep in mind, you want to keep your food and your water as clean as possible. The one on the right will run you right now, I think about $25 or so. So other things you might want to have on hand are heat lamps, especially if you are going to be raising chicks. You want to make sure you have heat lamps for the first month of their life. Also something you might want to have around in the wintertime. We provide several heat lamps within our coop to keep the chickens warmer. Another thing is think about is, lighting during the winter. A lot of people complain that their egg production decreases in the winter. Well, that's because the daylight hours, obviously are shorter. So the chickens aren't laying as much. So if you do provide artificial light, that is a good way to keep your production pretty much going year round. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is actually purchasing your chicks and your chickens. So the cheapest option would be hatching your own chicks. You can either pick a broody breed to help you do this. Broody just means that the chicken is sitting on the eggs and hatching them. If you don't want to do that, then you can get an incubator, do it yourself. So with your incubator, you just want to make sure you're keeping a watch on the temperature and the humidity. It takes 21 days for your eggs to hatch. Your temperature needs to be, pretty close around 99. Your humidity ranges anywhere from about 50 to 65%. And that's just because, the eggs are really porous. So water is escaping. You want to make sure you're keeping enough moisture in there for the chicks as they're developing. So once they're hatched, there'll be the same supplies you need for day-old chicks. So day-old chicks, you'll need, the heat lamp, a small container to keep them in. You're going to need chick feed, the smaller waters, the smaller feeders. So this is a picture. This is how they show up if you order them as day-old chicks. Post office will give you a call really early in the morning. So make sure you are available when you think they're about to come in, because they want you to pick them up as soon as you can. So places you can get day-old chicks, you can find a local supplier, Atwood's, Tractor Supply, Orchlands, all those places have chicks. And then online, Murray McMurray Hatchery, Cackle Hatchery, those are just a couple of examples of places you can get them. And I've just kind of put on here some descriptions, pricing. You can buy them male, female, unsexed. So a lot of breeds will come unsexed. There's a few, if they are sex linked, you can get them male or female before you'll know ahead of time. And then with all of these places online, the more you buy, the cheaper there are. So as your quantity goes up, you'll notice that, 16 to 24 chicks for males, $2.39. You go up to closer to 50, you're dropping by about 12 cents. And it just keeps dropping the more you get. There also usually is a difference in the male and the female. Obviously, females are going to be wanted more. So those are usually priced more for the egg laying breeds. So day-old broilers, same thing. These are some rates off of Murray McMurray. Your males are here going to be priced more. And that's because your male broilers, those Cornish cross hens, they actually, again, remember they develop a little bit quicker. So that's why they're priced a little higher. Your females, about 40, 45 cents less. And then you can get them unsexed. So you get a mix of males and females. And it is a good, sometimes you get unsexed. That way you can see the difference and, how they are growing. And then keep that in mind if you want to pay extra to have the males the next time around. So pullets is another option. So these are birds that are about to start laying, typically around 18 to 20 weeks old. I put $15 on here. This was like an average in a normal year, not this year. From what I've been hearing and looking, typically pullets and layers are bringing $25 and up right now. So sources for these, local breeders, again, some online sites, Facebook. Just keep in mind, if you are buying chickens from other places, make sure you're getting them from a reputable source, and we'll go over that a little bit more towards the end. The next thing I wanted to talk about is nutrition. So you have your chick feed, you have your layer mix, you have your meat bird feed. These come in crumbles, mash, or pellets. So crumbles, what you want to use when they're chicks. Mash and pellets as they get older. Pellets are always going to be your cheaper version. So your ready mixed feed, so the ones you buy in the bag store, usually they have all the nutrients you need, so you don't need to add anything else. You can get these medicated or unmedicated. You can provide scraps. A lot of people throw out vegetables and things like that. It's nice for the chickens to have a little treat. Also grit, you need to provide that, especially if you aren't letting your chickens free range. So grit basically is like small stones, things to kind of help break down their food. So just keep that in the mind. A little bit of difference there between free range versus keeping them up, just things you might need to provide for them. So here's just kind of an example. So the chick starter on your far left, it's kind of hard to see, but the protein on that is about 18%. So you'll feed that for the first about 2 months. Then if you're doing layers, you can switch over to layer feed. Protein value goes down a little bit, because they're already kind of grown. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're doing broilers for meat birds, then you can go straight from the chick feed into the meat bird feed. And you'll notice that the protein value goes from 18 to 22%. Again, purpose of that chicken is to eat. So you're trying to get it as big as possible, quickly as possible. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was cost. Everyone wants to have their own eggs right now because of the price of eggs at the store, but just kind of keep in mind, while it might be nice, it might not always be cost effective. So just kind of be keeping track of your costs. So you have your variable costs, those are the ones that are always going to be changing, the things you're always going to be getting. And then you'll have your fixed costs. Your fixed costs are going to be your coop, your waters, your feeders. If you are doing incubators, any heat lamps. When you're calculating your budget, it's typical to do about, 3 years of breaking those down through that. And then about after 3 years, you can say those are paid for. Unless you need to replace any, then you need to factor that back into your budget. Your feed, obviously, prices are going to fluctuate on that. Chick feed and layer pellets might be priced a little bit different. Keep in mind, if you're on city water, you need to factor in the cost of water. Bedding, if you're buying shavings, there's ways you can save money on stuff like that. If you are growing corn or anything like that as a crop, again, like you said, you can use corn stalks. And then, the price of your chickens. And again, that's something that's really fluctuating in the past year. And even chicks, chicks used to be $1, $2, and now they're $3 and $4 a piece. And your grown chickens and your layers, your pullets, those are, again, was $10 to $15, and now they're anywhere from 25 and up. So this is just an example of a budget. This is something that we have online through OSU. If you'll go to our website and go to the search button, just type in chickens, chicken budget. It'll pull up a few fact sheets. We have one just on kind of general what you need for chickens. And then we have this one, budget. And so there you can plug in what you've bought, you know, your number of hens, your number of chickens, and then all your fixed costs, your variable costs, and then it'll, you know, give you a price down at the bottom. So just, you know, a lot of people don't really keep track, you know, and they just kind of set a price, but you want to make sure that you are at least breaking even, if not, you know, making a profit when you are doing your selling your eggs and selling your meat. So just keep that in mind, make sure you're keeping track of all of your costs so that you can figure that so that you're not selling for a loss. The next thing I wanted to talk about were predators. You know, a lot of people do lose a lot of chickens, unfortunately, because of this. So just, I say typical ones, really anything is a predator. I've lost a lot of chickens from a lot of different sources, but skunks are common. You usually know if a skunk has been in your coop. They rip the heads off of the chickens, unfortunately, and leave the rest. Raccoons, hawks, you know, typically take the whole chicken away. Bobcats, same thing, kind of carry them away. Domestic dogs, cats, owls, coyotes, anything that's a predator. Snakes, you know, there's chicken snakes. Make sure you're picking up your eggs. And that goes for anything. Keep mice and rats out. You know, you'll usually know if a rat or a mouse has been in your coop because you'll see an egg busted into. And sometimes that might be from the chicken. Just, you know, make sure you're providing enough calcium. That goes back to the nutrition. If you're given a balanced feed, then you really shouldn't have to worry about that. But if you do notice that your chickens are breaking into your eggs, you know, put out some extra calcium in the form of oyster shells, anything like that, and they'll keep that. But if you notice it's not chickens breaking into the eggs, it's probably a rat or a mouse. And then, you know, if you aren't picking your eggs up, you know, you'll start to get chicken snakes, unfortunately. And then, you know, when the chickens are smaller and they're chicks and stuff like that, you know, some of your rattlesnakes and things like that can get in there and kill them. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was disease, biosecurity. So just some common things. I'm not going to go into all of these in very much detail, but, you know, you have your virals, your fungals, your bacterial, your parasites, you know, so some of your virals, as you can see, avian influenza, your Newcastle, Merrick's, another common one. Parasites, you got your coccidiosis, bacterial, mycoplasmosis, and that's another fairly common one. So right now, I'm sure, unless you've been under a rock, you've been hearing about avian influenza. So there's a high path and a low path of this. And right now we are dealing with the high path. So you typically can tell if this is maybe an issue. You'll have a death rate approximately 75% of your flock within about a week's time. Unfortunately, you know, some of the signs and symptoms of this are also going to be common signs and symptoms of other diseases. But, you know, things that you can look for: lack of energy, diarrhea, gasping for air, sudden death. Just keep in mind when we're talking about all these different illnesses, if your chicken is not acting normal, then something is probably wrong. And that could either be an illness, maybe the nutrition, you know, it might just be molting. You know, about 18 months within a chicken's life, it will start molting and you'll see a decrease in egg production. You'll see it losing all of its feathers. You know, keep in mind, if it's around that time, that's probably what it is before you jump to a conclusion about something else. So Merrick's disease, this is more common in your younger chickens. It is a herpes viral disease. It can be prevented. A lot of your hatcheries will vaccinate against this, or you know, get your eggs. So kind of some things to look for is, you know, the legs stretched one way, the other one the other way. Some kind of paralysis is pretty common with this. It can have lesions on its sciatic nerve. Sometimes you might notice that it it has what's called a gray eye. So, the eye color has changed. And Marek's disease is carried within the chicken's feather follicles. So it's spread within the dust. And unfortunately, this is one of those things, if you get it, it kind of sticks around for a long time. And you really need to clean and disinfect and take everything out because it can be in there for months. So the other one I kind of wanted to mention was coccidiosis. Again, kind of more in the younger birds. Again, diarrhea, the weakness, the lethargy. If you cut it open, you'd see some red spots on its intestines. You can see possible blood or mucus in its fecal matter. That's again something to look for. Watch your chicken poop. It should be kind of fluffy, a little bit of white in it. If it's really runny, if it's discolored, if it's green or sometimes purple, that might be something that they ate. But if it's being like that for several days, if you see blood in it, it's really mucusy, there's probably something else going around. So coccidiosis, you have about a 10 to 20% loss within your flock. Again, stays in the litter for a long time. There is medicated feed. So when you go to the stores, you'll know that some of the bags say medicated, and that's something that they're helping with is coccidiosis, and there are vaccines for it. Again, this is ingested through parasitic eggs in their fecal matter. So that goes back to making sure you're changing out your shavings, your straw, your litter, just keeping that floor clean. If you do have, coop that's not moving, make sure, you're putting fresh stuff in there, as constantly as you can. And again, if you do have a coop, if it's, a really muddy mess, you're going to get some more bacteria and stuff like that if it's staying wet. So just try to throw in some stuff to kind of help get it dry. And that's, where the benefit of having, moving the coop every day or letting them free range kind of comes into place. If you can free range, I always say that's the best. You might have more predator loss, but, you'll probably see a little bit less illness within your chickens. Okay, lice and mites. This is something else to watch for. Just make sure that you are providing the chickens some way to take a dust bath. And that's just, if you'll see them, they'll find an area of dirt and they'll just kind of be shaking their feathers around. And that's just them trying to get clean or, if they do have mites or lice on them. Again, you see one chicken having issues, kind of keep it in mind, maybe some of the other ones are going to have it too. So just check your birds. There are treatments for this. There's a dust and spray solution. And, another way you might know that you have this, you're losing eggs, the chickens are losing weight, things like that. If you do have chickens, unfortunately, that pass, there is something available called the Disease Surveillance Program. So ODAF will come out and pay the cost of doing a necropsy on your chicken. They'll test it for avian influenza right now, but then also for other things. So just keep that in mind if you do want to know what happened to your chicken. It's 1 or 50, just this is an option for sure to know. So kind of how to prevent all this, make sure you're cleaning everything, you're bleaching everything, you're disinfecting it as regularly as possible. I say don't share equipment between anyone else. Your equipment's your equipment. I would even advise not to buy used equipment, stuff like that. If you do, please make sure that you're cleaning it very well. Limiting visitors, especially if they have chickens, keep them out of your flock. It's nothing to be rude about right now. It's just what's going on. That's the best thing you can do. If you do have visitors, you can have them put covers on their shoes to help prevent any kind of spread. Keep feed in containers, clean up spilled feed. Again, this kind of helps rats, mice, any carriers of any diseases kind of stay out of everything and shop it from that. And then, last, make sure you are purchasing from a reputable source. I won't say to stay off of Facebook and social media, but if you are going to do that, go see their place, make sure it looks clean, make sure their chickens don't look sick, make sure they're up moving around. They're not lethargic and things like that. You know, you can tell if a chicken isn't feeling good. So just keep that in mind when you are buying chickens from those sources. Here's my contact information. Again, I'm the Love County office. I have my email and my phone number if you have any questions. And I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions for Lauren? You're welcome to put them in the chat box if you would like.
And if you think of any, just put them in the chat box and I'll keep an eye on that, you know, for the rest of our session.
I don't see any questions currently. Okay. Like Lauren said, you know, if you've got any extra questions, you know, or if you think of anything in a few minutes that you want to ask, go ahead and put those in the chat box and then we can get those answered more towards the end of the meeting. Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Greatly appreciated. I'm sitting here trying to pick out my next round of chicken breeds that I want. Okay, so for our next speaker, we will have Justin McConaughey. And Justin is the Produce Safety and Cottage Foods Coordinator through the Oklahoma Department of Ag, Food, and Forestry. And then I believe after you, Justin, is going to be Tommy Stevens. And he is the Meat Inspection Program Administrator through the Oklahoma Department of Ag, Food, and Forestry. And so Justin's going to be talking about selling eggs, and then Tommy will be talking about broiler production as well.
Okay. Just gotta change.
I think you need to flip your,
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
There you go.
All right, yeah, thank you. I'm Justin McConaughey. I actually deal with produce and homemade food law, but our director of the egg law couldn't do this presentation because he had something else to do tonight. And so since I used to be an egg grader, I'm going to go over the Oklahoma egg law. So selling eggs in Oklahoma, if you're selling eggs on the farm, so people come to the farm and pick them up, then there is no license or any other requirement. You can do whatever you want there. But as soon as you take those eggs off the farm, then that actually requires an annual license and that they must be properly packaged and labeled. So for a small egg packer license, so that's a producer that sells 5,000 dozen or less eggs per year, then that's a $50 a year license. So I imagine that's probably most of the people we're talking to. If you are a large egg packer, then that's $35 plus a monthly fee. And I believe that monthly fee is a minimum of $18. And then licensing and labeling allows you to sell at any kind of farmer's market, at retail stores, restaurants, or pretty much anywhere in the state of Oklahoma. So to be able to sell those eggs, not only do you have to have a license, they must be washed. They must be graded and sized according to USDA standards. They must be kept refrigerated, so between 32 degrees and 45 degrees Fahrenheit. 45 is a little higher than most foods. Normally, the health department says things have to be under 41 degrees, but eggs could go up to 45. We also want to make sure that we do not go below 32, because I have seen frozen eggs before, and when they freeze, they break open and then they're basically worthless at that point. They must be packed in new cartons. A lot of our, small, a lot of our farmers market egg dealers will have people try to bring cartons back to them, and that's not allowed. They must be using new cartons, and it must be labeled. And so on that label, we must have a farm or packer name and address, the Oklahoma license number, or if it's a large USDA plant, to use the plant number. And here's this picture I took of a carton. That P2A, that's the plant number on that carton. Must have the grade and size. And grade and size, we're talking about a minimum guarantee of what's in that carton. So you can actually put larger eggs or better grades in that carton than what you are guaranteeing. There also must be a pack date, which is the date that you put the eggs in the carton, and an expiration date, which is no more than 45 days after that pack date. So like in this example here, we have pack date is using a Julian calendar date. So 039 means the 39th day of the year. Yeah, and then the expiration date is no more than 45 days past day 39. You don't have to label on the end of the carton. You can put that information on the top, but this is just the common way that most of our eggs at the grocery store are labeled. Then we also must have a refrigeration statement that says to keep the eggs at 45 degrees or lower. And we must have safe handling instructions exactly as written here. And there's an example of that. Like this one is inside the carton. A lot of times it's on the back of the carton. And then when we're talking about grading and sizing eggs, we're following USDA standards. So what we always recommend people go, and you can search online and download this book, is the USDA egg grading manual. And it is a great book. It explains how the eggs are developed in the chicken, and then how they're washed, how they're graded, what to look for in grading, how they're sized, all that stuff. And then also I found a couple of videos here that can also be useful. They're from the University of Georgia Extension. Is the FFA poultry judging class number 7 and 8, goes over the exterior and interior qualities of eggs. So for grades, like I said, grade is a minimum guarantee to the quality and freshness of that egg. And grades for eggs can be AA, A, or B. And we're looking at both the shell and internal quality. And if you are selling eggs, do not use the USDA grading symbol unless those eggs are officially graded by USDA egg grader, because you'd be breaking federal law if you did that. So if you're not USDA graded, you don't use their USDA symbol, you just write grade A. Don't say USDA grade A, just grade A. For shell quality, so for AA and A, it's going to be normal shape. If there's any bumps or ridges, just very minor bumps. Grade B can have an abnormal shape. It can have bumps, ridges, and thin spots. No grade, so if we have cracks, which in the industry they call them checks, leaks, or if they're dirty, like have fecal matter on the egg, or if there's a prominent stain, then those are no grades, and you cannot sell no grades. For internal quality, we look at one of the biggest things we look for is the air cell. And so this here image has an example of an air cell gauge. I'd recommend you make one, print one out using heavy cardstock. It makes it really easy to determine how tall that air cell is. So an AA quality has an 1/8 inch of air cell or less. And when you when you spin that egg, you want to use a dark room and have a candling light, like a powerful flashlight or something like that, and give that egg a little twist, and you can see that yolk spin inside there, and you'll just barely see that orange, like in this first picture here. But if we go to A quality, that's a 3/16 or less air cell, and the yolk is fairly defined. So it's a little bit, you can kind of see a little bit of that round outline of that orange yolk in there. And then for a grade B, it's a 3/16 or larger. And when you spin it, you can definitely see that yolk, because when you're spinning it, it's getting close to the outside of that shell. And these are defects that you may see inside of an egg. And if you see them, they are no grade. You just want to toss them out. Of course, like cracks, or as the industry calls them, checks, are no grade. If the egg is leaking, that's a no grade. Bloods and meat spots. So if you give that egg a little spin on the kettling light, sometimes you'll see a little red dot in there, and that's a blood spot. If a bloody yolk is where all the inside just has blood in it, and so that just shines red. Stuck yolk is an old egg. It's gotten dry, dehydrated, and the yolk has settled normally towards the bottom. And when you try to spin it, it won't move. So it's stuck. And if you keep trying to spin it, it'll eventually become a mixed rot, which is where that yolk has opened up and completely mixed up with all the white. And then black rot is a very rare condition. I've only seen it once, and someone had to intentionally make it for me to be able to see it. But it is an egg that a mold has gotten in there, churned it rotten, and you will not be able to see through it under candling light. Do not break open that egg. If you do, break it open outside, because it is the worst smell ever. Here are the sizes for eggs. And like I said, we're following USDA sizes. So we have jumbo, extra large, large, medium, small, peewee. And this chart is based on net weight per dozen. So if you're going to weigh an individual egg, you want to divide that by 12 to figure out what the individual egg minimum weight is. And as a reminder, all these, both grades and sizes, are a minimum guarantee. So let's say you want to, you have a carton and you want to label that carton as a large grade A. You can also have extra large and jumbo in that carton. It's just you can't have anything smaller than what you state on the label. And if you have any further questions, I can help answer them here, or later on you can contact Brian Buchwald. He's the one that is director of this program. And that's that.
Are there any questions for Justin? I have a question.
Yeah.
How accurate is the egg float test?
I've never tested it out, but it does make a little bit of sense, because basically the quality of an egg is determined on how old it is and how fresh it is. The older it is, the more it dries out and the bigger the air cell. So that's where I think that air cell might make it float, but I don't know for sure. I've never tested it.
Gotcha. Okay. There is one question. Is this only for chicken eggs or quail and duck eggs as well?
So the Oklahoma egg law is only for chicken eggs. So quail and duck eggs, you do not have to have a license for.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Justin? It does not appear so. Okay. Thank you, Justin, for that information. Tommy, would you like to go ahead and talk about the meat side of things?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Good evening. To start with, the licensing that is required is on our ODAF website under the meat and poultry inspection and compliance. About halfway down is a certificate of registration for meat distributor, broker, and warehouseman license. This license is, there is no charge, and it is automatically updated annually. So once you have the license, whenever you start to market your birds, you could be asked if you're licensed with the Department of Agriculture, and that's the license that they're referring to. The other process, part of the process, is there are two exemptions. The 1,000 bird and the 10,000 bird exemption. You can have one or the other. And with that, you can sell only to the end user. You cannot wholesale those products. Preferably frozen, but I know there are several cases to where the buyer comes to the farm, picks out the chicken, and then purchases it that way. When you get into the inspected side, where as you start to market your products and your business is growing, you might look into wholesaling that product. Then you would need to have that those birds processed at an inspected facility. Currently, we just have one state inspected facility in Oklahoma, and that's in Chakota. There are several in Texas that are USDA facilities, and I believe there are 2 in Western Arkansas. But we've tried to simplify the process after the COVID. And do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Tommy?
I'll ask one. So what are the labeling requirements when you're, selling the 1,000 birds and the 10,000 birds, maybe versus the wholesaling?
There should be that's a good question. I would need to ask Ron Hall, which was our compliance supervisor in the room. The label should say not for sale. And that
yes, yeah, it should say not for sale. Also, the farm's name that is registered with us and a phone number, how to get a hold of them in case they do take the chickens back for their end use. And that is all required. Also, I want to say something about the 10,000 birds. The USDA has 20,000 birds. Oklahoma only has the 10,000 birds. On the 1,000 bird exemption, they can be killed outside anywhere you want them. It doesn't make no difference. On the 10,000 birds, you have to go through Tommy and them to build a establishment. Evidently, it doesn't have to be very big. Just as long as it's cleanable, and one of Tommy's guys will check it once or twice a year. Right now, we only have one 10,000 birds, and that's up toward Valma. But I'll let you take back over, Tommy.
Thank you, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there was another question.
Yeah, someone asked just for you to repeat the cutoff limit for the wholesale.
I'm not sure.
Okay. The 1,000 bird is the person that's doing the 1,000 farm slaughter, where it can be killed anywhere on their premises. You have to keep documentation, and we do. If we get a complaint, we go check them. You have to keep who you sold to and your breeder, wherever you buy your small chicks. We have to see all that information, because there's a few times we've gone out and it showed that the person that was under the 1,000 exemption bought over 4,000 small chickens or whatever they're called, little chicks. Well, they're not going to lose that many. And we finally got them to, come up and say, yeah, we did stretch it out. On the 10,000 birds, and this is really going to sound really strange, but it is. We have to adapt to the USDA laws. The 10,000 bird exemption, the USDA has a 20,000 bird exemption, but Oklahoma, we've made it a 10,000 bird. You can actually kill the chickens in the plant. I mean, they have to be in this plant. You have to kill them, chill them, everything. And they have to be labeled, not for sale. I mean, this bird was killed without inspection. The farm's name, the farm's address, and the farm's number. Those can be took to grocery stores. Most of what we're seeing is Asian markets. They love these birds. But the feds, the USDA, they on their 20,000 birds, they put a P number, which it's, I don't have it right with me, but it's the exemption number. And if you look up under the exemption number, it shows you this bird was killed without inspection, but the USDA is allowing people to sell them in a grocery store as long as the people know that these birds were killed without inspection. The USDA doesn't require this bird wasn't killed without inspection. It just has the P number. The Oklahoma decided, we're not going to use the P number. We're just going to put these birds were killed without inspection. And then with all the label requirements and everything. If we get a phone call that somebody's selling these birds at a grocery store, we go actually look and pull their invoice. Under our statutes, they have to keep records. Every grocery store, anything they sell in that store has to have, meat related, has to have an invoice. If we get this invoice and we track it back that it is a 10,000 bird exemption, they're okay. If it's not, then there's a violation that could be thrown both ways. I hope that kind of cleared a little bit of the mud up.
And so are there labeling requirements for the 1,000 bird?
Just this bird was, this is where it really gets crazy. The 1,000 birds, all it has to have is almost the same thing as 1,000 birds. Is this bird was killed without inspection, the farm's phone number or address. And if we find any birds that's out in being sold wholesale, like to a grocery store or anything, we trace it back and find out if they're licensed either as 1,000 bird or the 10,000 bird. Let's say we find some in a store that is 1,000 bird, they've got the 1,000 bird exemption. That thing could cost anywhere from $3,000 to $1,000 fine per bird. And we try to tell people, I wish there was a different way of labeling things, but this is the way they're labeled. Both of them are labeled the same. Is we just have to be on our toes. And Reese's, or let's say any big chain, I'm trying to think, some Crest in Oklahoma City, I could almost promise you these 10,000 birds exemption will not be sold in those stores, because it says legally they could, but just because it says this bird was killed without inspection. Your Asian and other, there's 3 or 4 different, they're all around the Asian population that really wants this. And that's why we had to adopt. Me and the main director fought back and forth for 3 years. We didn't want that in the state of Oklahoma. And the feds finally said, yeah, you've got to have it. And we dropped it from 20,000 to 10,000. There again, 1,000 birds doesn't have to have a building. It can be killed outside. The 10,000 has got to have a building approved by Tommy and them. So I hope I've addressed some of the questions.
There was one more question. Are there
Okay.
processing places that process for a small amount, say up to 50 birds for personal use?
Like Tommy said, for their personal use, Tommy, I don't believe we have a custom exempt poultry plant. The 1,000 birds, they can't kill other people's birds. They have to kill their own. The 10,000 birds, it states that they have to also raise these birds. If I'm wrong, Tommy, can you verify
No,
that?
that's correct. They need to raise the birds.
So I don't guess we have a custom exempt, and I'm not too sure federal does either.
So even like local slaughterhouses are not allowed to slaughter, you know,
Just the
birds.
inspected birds that are be killed under inspection, that you can take them to the Shakota plant. As far as just having them killed for your own personal use, you either have to do it or you have to take it to it inspected, and it's going to cost you a little bit more because the bird is being inspected. The inspection doesn't cost anything. That's provided. It's just the labor, the labeling and everything that the inspector plant has to produce. And I know that's kind of crazy, but that's the way it is.
Okay.
If I could just kind of add something. So, you
Uh-huh.
know, the USDA facilities, they will take less than 50 from what I understand, but they might not piece them out. So they'll just, it'll be a whole bird. If you want them pieced out, breast, thighs, wings, all that, it's usually have to be a quantity of 100 or more.
On that, when you take 50 or more, is it to a USDA inspected plant?
Yes.
Oh,
Those,
okay,
that is
okay.
specifically a USDA inspected plant.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any custom exempt. So that's good to know.
What about quail and ducks for meat, just out of curiosity?
Far as compliance, we don't have anything like that here. You can sell all the quail and ducks off of your place without even license with us. But if you sell quail to a grocery store, most of our quail come from Georgia because we don't have any quail processors here. But it has to be inspected by another state or the USDA to come into the state of Oklahoma. That's why you never see any quail with the state inspection on it.
In the grocery store. But then if you wanted to sell them from your property,
Farm.
there's no.
Yes, there's no
Okay.
license, no anything, no record keeping.
Okay.
Tommy, is that the way I understand it?
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
Thank you, Ron.
you're more than welcome.
Okay. Are there any other questions or any questions that I missed in the chat? I don't think I missed any.
I might throw something out that I get questions all the time about the poultry, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay. We write a lot of violations because under the 1,000 bird exemption, you cannot sell them at farmers market. But you can put a sign up and say, I'm here every Saturday. I will take an order for the 1,000 bird exemption. I'll take an order for how many chickens you want. They can bring them the next week, but every bird has to have that customer's name on it. Because if we go there and we get a complaint, and let's say they got 12 birds with people's names on them, and they got 6 more without names, then they were trying to co-sell them, and that could be a hefty fine too. We don't want to fine anybody at all.
Okay, so make sure if you're selling at a farmer's market, make sure every bird has already been spoken for from the previous week, and then that you can take them there and you
Yes,
can give them to the people who placed the order.
yes, as long as they've got to have the customer's name on it.
Customer's name on it. Okay.
Uh-huh. That's the only thing we ever see real strong out there is people not knowing the law on that part.
Okay. Do you know how to find markets for meat and eggs other than straight from the farm or grocery wholesale?
Can we repeat that question again?
Do you know of how to find markets for meat and eggs other than straight from the farm or grocery wholesale? I'm assuming maybe like, can you sell to restaurants or anything like that, or
Yeah,
are there other markets?
as far as the meat, if you become a distributor for the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, that means every piece of product that comes from the packing house has to have the mark of inspection, either state of Oklahoma, which means you can sell it to any store, restaurant in the state of Oklahoma, or USDA, you can sell it anywhere, in other states. But you have to be a distributor with us.
Okay.
And that's found in, like Tommy said, the meat inspection, our website, Oklahoma Department of Agriculture.
Okay. What about for the egg side of that?
That's somebody else's question, not mine.
Yeah, just like to sell eggs, if you have a license and have them washed in new cartons and graded and sized and labeled, yeah, you can sell those to grocery stores, restaurants, anywhere. If you're looking for a place to buy meat and eggs that's not like a grocery store, you can go to oklahomaagritourism.com and look up farmers markets and even some farmers market hubs that are around the state.
And I'm fixing to put that link into the chat box. Whoops. Okay, the site or the website for the Oklahoma Agritourism is there for everyone. Are there any other questions? It does not appear so. Well, thank you guys very much. Greatly appreciated. Very informative. Everyone should expect an email maybe by the end of the week or early next week, and it'll have just kind of an overview or recap of the information that was talked about, and then also a link to the private YouTube video for everyone to view at their own time as well. Is there anything else? Are we good? All right. Thank you guys. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us this evening.
Thank you.